before this insurrection, before the clown coup, I felt much more comfortable about talking about like lessons from 2020 Democratic losses and like really focusing on like where did they lose and where did they win, because progressives now make up a bigger percentage of Democrats, but Democrats make up a smaller percentage of the House, and there's just so much hand wringing over like, was it the DCCC, was it the centrist, was it defund the police that scared so many people away, that's the centrist line, and then or was it that they weren't speaking to the people? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that in terms of like, or do you feel like it's not either or, there's no real one line on the postmortem of why Democrats lost House seats?
Yeah, I don't think it's a one-liner. I think it's very complicated, but but I will say it definitely wasn't as simple as a slogan that's been around for a very long time, or socialism, or attacks that we can anticipate coming because they have been repeated multiple times. And I don't think it had nothing to do with the fact that we are, in a lot of parts of our country and nationally, wages have been stagnating for over 40 years. We've never seen income inequality at such a gross level. We've never seen this much money spent in our elections. And the lack of results coming from our elected officials in Congress. And I think all of that and the appearance of the Democratic Party, and we wrote a memo on this, from a lot of the leadership, from the folks that didn't do so well in their seats or barely made it, that they didn't talk about the economy, and they weren't able to make the connection or talk about race in a nuanced way. To actually to get through the sort of dog whistle politics that the other side has been pulling. And I think all of those things really matter. So I don't think it was necessarily one thing. I think it was a lack of investment on the National Party's part for decades. I think it was the failure of leadership, not just the Democratic Party, but our elected officials across the country for, unfortunately, getting to a place where when we do have a pandemic, we're not ready to have the most unpopular president and ever, the most corrupt president ever. There's a number of things that led us here, but it definitely wasn't a slogan, and it definitely wasn't, we need to anticipate when these attacks are coming, which is why investment in places to show that you care about people. And I think this cycle, as we look to 2022 and 2024, it's got to be about actually delivering and not wasting an opportunity like we did last time when we had a Dem trifecta, and actually showing results for Americans. We could start with the pandemic, but it's got to be also seizing this opportunity that we haven't had in a long time to really transform our economy and our society to work for everybody.
I'm sorry, Miles, I'm jumping in, but where do you see the most leverage when it comes to making some of those bold policy changes? I think, to me, I'm just going to give you my thoughts on, I think a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented people without a language of, but we're going to secure the border even more, which is the Democratic line and has been for so many decades. And the fact that Biden is not doing that is huge. Like, that is a radical break. It's not a radical idea. It's a radical break from where Democrats were even 4 years ago, just like falling over themselves to be like, oh, we're going to have snipers and there'll be dogs. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Where are some of those sort of openings where you're like, this is the lane. This is the thing that can deliver.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's really important. There's going to be those types of conversations, I think, where it's like, what can we get? And then there's also like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I think that especially for the progressives in the House right now, like I don't know if you guys have been seeing this $2,000 check conversation and how important it is that we're really applying pressure on leadership to actually do what was promised. So I think that's first and foremost actually getting money and expanding the social safety net also as we do these measures, and in the short term is going to be really critical. And then in the medium to long term, I think there are real barriers, like in the Senate. I know that Biden is against this, but he's going to have to deal with the filibuster at some point, and democracy reform. I know that there's been some bills that were passed in the House that seem, in terms of the rest of the agenda that we have to actually get implemented that are going to be really important. I think the pathway to citizenship is huge. I think doing something around health, there's so many things that seem $15 minimum wage is actually going to be, even though it's coming a little too late, is actually going to happen. But I think in the short term, it's what can we do to expand the social safety net, especially in the middle of the pandemic. And Bernie has been talking about a special healthcare program just for the pandemic. And I think there are parts of where we do this where it paves the path to Medicare for all, so that when it actually is an opportunity where we can take it to a floor vote, we might have a better chance at passing it. But after we kind of show right in the middle of a pandemic what it means when you do have some sort of universal health care, I think will be really key in continuing to keep it high in public opinion, and also demonstrate that this is a policy that actually works. And I think that one could actually save millions of lives.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mo.
I'm just curious, like, you know, when talking about, you know, just district flipping or any kind of red to blue program at the moment, it sounds like red to what? How, you know, how do you even begin a conversation? I mean, like, you know, years ago it was more like, okay, well, we've identified this group of people who don't vote. If we turn them out, that's how we'll get to our 50% plus one. But I'm curious now, in looking at all of the various landscapes, understanding that, you know, social movement building is, you know, really trying to get as many people in touch with, you know, how they can better their lives. I'm curious in a district, you know, that you even have eyes on to try and turn blue, what that candidate would look like, what that messaging looks like. I mean, obviously the things that are being said by progressives feels like it's not very controversial if you just say, I feel everyone should have food and health insurance and an education. Oh, whoa, you're calling me a what now? You know, like, how does that, what's that sort of, what's your perspective, you know, running an organization like this and looking at, okay, how do we enter these districts?
Yeah. Well, first, I think I saw someone in the comments. Anyone right now that's listening or watching, you can go to justicedemocrats.com/nominate to nominate anyone in your local community. The way that we find candidates, regardless of district, is sort of art and science. The art part, and, you know, just like AOC was nominated by her brother, Jessica Cisneros, who it was a candidate that we ran the cycle out in Texas 28, was nominated by her local high school teacher, because we took out an ad. Anybody, send them through the nomination form. But that's twofold, right? I think there's one, like in some of those districts, there are just going to be, and there are, I believe, thousands of AOCs, Jamal Bowman's, Cori Bush's, people that exist in every district in America. We just don't know them yet, and we haven't invested in them yet. And I think that maybe not everybody is for the federal level, but there are, and I'm going to just talk about the federal level specifically, because that's where some of these red to blues where we're investing in. I think that's one thing. And I think a candidate that speaks to their community and is really hard to find, but it's also, once you find that and you're able to you know, find someone that can really connect on a real level, not just policy, but be able to talk about it in a way where their community is going to trust them and believe what they have to say, right? Especially when you see Washington totally not working for you, makes such a huge difference. I think swearing off corporate money to show that your community, that you're actually going.
That Trump did. Trump talked about fucking giving everybody health care, and I fund my own campaign, right? Like, it's amazing to me that those two things, funding your own campaign and like expanding the social safety net, actually is very attractive. Of course, he's full of lies, and of course, you know, that was, you know, utter BS, but like, even just naming those issues, I think, is really important. And like, people aren't as allergic to them, I think, as a lot of, I mean, it's basically corporations are allergic to them. And those are the ones who are paying for your campaigns often.
It's almost like because we've become so, it's like the hyper partisan era that we're in. So many people have actually quite literally lost sight of what their own needs are, because it's almost that, you know, like what you're talking about is like, the way to talk to folks is to just, you know, meet them where they're at. And a lot of the times the language doesn't have anything to do with politics, or more than being like, hi, I'm here and I say I care about you. And something like that's very disarming. It's like, but I'm so used to, but I'm on this team and used to not wanting help, but I do how do we, it's just interesting to see how almost like the real art of it is that you're just speaking out completely like depoliticized language and going straight to people's humanity. And like, that's the winning formula.
Yo, and there's an opening right now to grab the moral. This is what I've been saying, is like to grab the moral, high ground right now when the other parties has been completely debased. Just like, bye. Bye. Family values. Bye. Have you become a patron yet? Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is where you can directly support this show and help me make it sustainable so that I can do more of what I do best. Doing this.